All right. Today we're going to do the second of my 3-week series on financial literacy through biblical stewardship. This week is going to be on budgets, savings, and living within your means. Before we get into all that, I do want to say a quick prayer for you guys. Lord, I just want to thank you for this opportunity just to come into your house and to meet with your people and to dig into your word. I praise you just for being who you are and just allowing us the opportunity to be in your presence. I pray that your spirit will join us today, that everything I have to say will be your words and not mine, that you will speak to everyone here, including myself, through these words, Father. I pray that you will open our hearts and our minds to what your word has to say, and that we can apply this to our own lives so we can be a blessing to those around us as well, also being blessed by you, Father. I ask these things in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen. All right, we're going to start off. I'm going to really quickly read Proverbs 13:11. I told you all last week, a lot of Proverbs when you're looking at financial literacy. Proverbs 13:11 says, "Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gains little by little will increase it." I could teach an entire course on financial literacy just by picking verses from Proverbs. You're going to hear a few more examples over the next couple of weeks, but for today, this one is a good starting point. Again, it says, "Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it." Does anyone know, just by listening to that, like I mentioned last week, Proverbs is very poetic language, so we kind of got to pull the truth from it at times. So what does that mean? Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, whoever gathers it little by little will increase it. So what does that mean to you? What does that say?
The blessings, your blessings are going to stack up.
Yeah.
Instead of like looking at other people and just thinking like, oh, all this big check or big money will come all at one time.
And it doesn't generally come at one time. We like shortcuts. We love to find the shortcut that get rich quick. But there's a reason when we hear the phrase get rich quick, that the next word is usually scheme. Get rich quick, scheme. In fact, when I started typing get rich quick into Google while I was planning this lesson, it filled in scheme for me because it assumed the next thing I was going to say is scheme. So we talked about it a little last week. Get rich quick, get poor quick. We talked about, winners of the lottery, someone that wasn't good at money already and was suffering, poor, making bad financial decisions, win the lottery. They don't keep that money. That money goes. There's no substitute for hard work, good planning, and discipline. So today we're going to focus on 3 financial principles. What the Bible has to say about those principles and some practical steps we can take to make them work today. We're going to discuss budgeting, saving, and living within your means. And we're going to start with living within your means. Today's going to be a little different. We're going to do the first big chunk of this, the way we normally do it. But in the end, I'm going to get down to the budgeting section. And I'm going to talk a little bit about budgeting, but then we're going to cut the camera off. And those of us that are here, we're going to get together at one table like we actually like each other. And we're actually going to dig into a budget. So a little bit of our traditional, but then a little bit of like a regular classroom setting, working through something. So somebody read for me Proverbs 21:20. A lot of Proverbs today. Proverbs 21:20.
Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it.
This is a repeat from last week. We didn't talk about this one last week, but it's worth digging back into. So what do we learn from this? What do we learn from this specific verse? What is it telling us?
That kind of like saying like a wise man can handle getting like maybe a good, like as you're saying treasure, so saying like a good amount of money, but someone that's not wise, they'll get it and basically just throw it away.
Exactly right. If you're wise, you'll be able to have that money. You'll keep the money. You'll do the right things with the money, and you'll have nice things in your house. We're not taking a vow of poverty here. we're being wise, we're making good decisions. If you're foolish, you're just gonna blow through everything. It doesn't matter how much money you get, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. If you are foolish, if you're making bad decisions, the money's just gonna go. So I had a cousin that used to call it living a champagne lifestyle on a Kool-Aid budget. It happens a lot. It's one of the biggest destroyers of your budget, biggest destroyers of your savings, biggest destroyer of your credit, and it's one of the biggest destroyers of your future, of your financial future. So just some examples. What are some things that we like to spend too much money on?
Food.
Food? Shoes. Yeah, I mentioned shoes a little bit later. Yep, we spend too much money on that. The big ones that I have, the obvious ones that I just know people spend outside of their own budget on, or at least what should be their budget on: eating out, clothes, shoes, cars, house. Now, none of these things in and of themselves are bad. And if you budget it right, I'm not even saying you can't have nice shoes, you can't have nice things. You need to eat, but do you need to eat at the most expensive restaurant all the time? You may need to eat at an expensive restaurant every once in a while. I'm not saying not, I've taken Andre out. They eat at places that are outside of our normal budget at special times. But, meal planning, prepping, making sure that you're following a budget is important. You need clothes, but do you need the most expensive clothes? The most expensive designer purses or shoes. I've known too many people walking around with a Louis, don't have any money in it. And if that's what you decided to budget to spend your extra money on, save up for that, I'm not judging you for that. You'll probably look at some of the things I've spent my money on and think it's stupid. But you've got to make these wise decisions. You need a car, but do you need a car that's going to cost you a monthly bill that's going to then drain every paycheck that you get for the next 3, 5, 7 years? You need to know how much you can afford to pay every month before you sign up to pay that much money every month. So why do we do it? Why do we spend more than we should? And I'm not talking about unavoidable bills. I'm talking, the grocery bill is going to be higher these days. It just is what it is. You're going to have to buy gas. You're going to have to pay your electric bill. But as far as the unnecessary things, why do we spend so much money on those things?
Not that we necessarily need it.
We want it. I know in some people's cases, it's a status thing. Image. Very much image. Someone else that has it, you don't want to be left out. It's called keeping up with the Joneses. More recently, they call it FOMO. I don't know if anything to replace FOMO. I'm old and not all the way always on top of what the newest things they're calling that are, but we worry about what other people think about us too much. If we don't have a whole lot of money, we don't want people to think we don't have a whole lot of money.
Right.
So we want to present this image. And you can still present, a polished image. You can still look nice. You can still look like you're not broke without making yourself go broke in the process. It's planning. So what is the answer? Well, the goal is to cut back on the things you can't afford, cut back on unnecessary spending. And my next step, you need to open up a savings account, possibly multiple savings accounts. So I'm going to read Proverbs 6 through 8. Proverbs 6 through 8.
Go to the end, O sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief officer or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest.
This one reminds me of the story of the ant and the grasshopper. Y'all remember that one? There was even like a Disney cartoon back in the 50s or something, where the grasshopper's living it up and making fun of the ants for working so hard. But then the winter comes, and the ants have saved up enough supplies to make it through, but the grasshopper has nothing. Squandered everything and is out there in the cold. We talked last week about giving up something like overpriced coffee from a coffee shop and putting that money into a savings account. I know people that buy an $8 cup of iced coffee every day before work. That adds up. What we discussed is if they put that money, if you spent that much money every day on coffee, you put that money into a savings account, you'd have over $2,000 in a year. And I mentioned that in 8 years, Andre and I will have our 25th anniversary. We're going to want to go on a nice vacation. I can max out my credit cards, I can get a loan, or I could put that money in a savings account and have $16,000 in 8 years. And I'm probably not going to go on a $16,000 vacation. That's an awful lot of money. So it's making the wise decisions. Again, if they put that money, so what are some reasons? Can you think of some reasons that you would have a savings account? You don't just have to have one. You can have multiple savings accounts for different things. So what are some reasons you might have a savings account?
Emergency.
Emergencies is number one. What else?
Saving up for a house.
Saving up for a house, either for a down payment or to outright purchase a house if you want to go that route.
And expenses.
Expenses, home improvements. I just had to put in a new HVAC unit at my house. Believe me, it's very expensive. Retirement. I know people that every year, instead of blowing through all their money at Christmas, as soon as Christmas is over, they've got an account for that. They start just putting a few bucks in, a little bit of money in every paycheck. So that when the next Christmas rolls around, it's not a burden. They just dip into that account and they have Christmas. Vacations. I know people do the exact same thing with vacations. Open up an account for a couple the other day. It's like, want to open a new savings account? Ask them why. They're like, we like to take a vacation every year. There you go. Wise decision. There's lots of reasons to open up a savings account. Saving isn't as hard as you would think. But the trick to savings, what we're going to get into next, we're going to spend most of the rest of this day on, is budgeting. So somebody read for me Proverbs 21:5. Proverbs 21, verse 5.
Mm.
21:5.
The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty.
Yep. So how does this all come together? This verse tells us you need a plan. You need a budget. Dave Ramsey, and I get a lot of my ideas. I don't agree with Dave Ramsey on everything. But Dave Ramsey, it's a lot where I get a lot of my stuff. I mentioned him last week. He's the biblical financial advice expert that I talked about last week. He's fond of saying things along the lines of every dollar needs to be told where to go. Basically, but the way I've put it ever since hearing that is any dollar that you don't tell where to go is going to go away. So every dollar you make needs to be accounted for. You need to know where it's going to be, even if it's your fun stuff. Like I want you to budget. Like I like going to the movies. So line item on your budget. This is how much I'm going to spend going to the movie every month. Not asking you to never have fun, but you're going to spend the end of the month looking at your account, your bank account, your budget. If you haven't planned your money, and you're going to wonder where it all went, and it's going to go if you don't plan it out first. So for the rest of this time, I'm going to shut this off. I'm going to sit down with you. I put in the group meeting if anybody wants an electronic copy, and I do suggest using the electronic copy, a copy of a budget. That way you got it on your computer and you could change it as you need to and play with it. But I've got paper copies here for us to look over today, and we are just step by step going to go through a budget.
We'll dismiss them on faith online with prayer.
Yes, I will pray for that. Yeah. So, and also come back next week, because next week we are going to talk about some more complicated things like debt, credit, and possibility of, what it takes to find a better job if you're not in the position that you think you should be right now. So I'm going to pray for you guys real quick. Lord, I just want to thank you. Just thank you for everybody that's here. Thank you for everybody that's here in this room today, but also everyone that's watching online, that you will just bless us. You will guide us as we dig into not only your word, but your budgets as we plan to use the gifts that you have given us responsibly and to be good stewards with the guidance that your word has given us. I think we often think that your word and our pocketbooks are separate, but your word has a lot to say about what's in our wallets, Lord. And I just pray that you will guide us, you will help us make the right decisions, and you will bless those decisions and the outcomes of that. I ask these things in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen.